The emergency alarm filled the Galactic Council chambers with a sound that made everyone stop talking. Haz, a tall bird-like creature with silver feathers, touched the control panel with one long finger. The alarm stopped, but the silence that followed felt worse. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a small mining station floating in space, surrounded by 12 dark ships. Red lights blinked across the hologram, marking damage and fires. Outpost 7 is under attack, Haz announced. His voice was calm, but his feathers stood up slightly, showing his worry. The Ravager fleet has them surrounded. They report 847 civilians inside. Life support is failing. Ambassador sat in the human observation section, a small area at the back of the chamber. She was not allowed to sit with the other council members. Humans were only observers here, not full members. She leaned forward, her dark eyes focused on the hologram. Next to Haz, OK clicked his mandibles together. He looked like a giant insect, with 4 arms and dark purple skin that reflected the light. "How long until life support fails completely?" he asked. 17 hours, Haz replied. Perhaps less if the pirates damage more systems. Around the chamber, representatives from 20 different species began talking at once. Their voices mixed together in a dozen languages. The translation devices everyone wore made it possible to understand each other, but right now, nobody was saying anything useful. "The fleet could reach them," someone suggested. "Impossible," the representative said quickly. "We have a territorial dispute with the Empire. We cannot move our ships from the border." "What about the military?" "Our ships are 3 weeks away, by the time we arrive." "They have ships nearby." "We have only cargo vessels in that sector. They are not equipped for combat." Listen to excuse after excuse. Every species had a reason why they could not help. They talked about treaties and resources and political problems. They talked about proper procedures and military protocols. They talked and talked while people were dying. She looked down at her data pad. Captain had sent her a message 10 minutes ago. His small fleet was finishing a routine patrol only 6 hours away from Outpost 7. 3 ships. That was all humanity had in this part of space. 3 small escort ships that were only supposed to protect human diplomats. Has raised one wing for silence. "We must follow proper military doctrine," he said. "A rescue operation requires careful planning. We cannot simply rush in without." "People are dying." His voice cut through the chamber. Every eye turned to look at her. Some species did not have eyes, but they all focused their attention on the human ambassador. She stood up slowly and walked down the steps toward the center of the chamber. She was not supposed to speak unless asked, but she did not care about that rule right now. "Ambassador," Haz said, his voice tight. "You are out of order, observers do not." 847 people are about to die, said. She stopped at the edge of the council floor. "I have listened to everyone explain why they cannot help. I have heard about treaties and borders and resources. What I have not heard is anyone saying they will save those civilians." OK's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation. "The situation is complex. There are procedures." "My people have ships nearby." Looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every she could. "Captain's fleet can be there in 6 hours. 3 ships, not a large force, but they can try." The chamber exploded with noise. Some laughed. Others made sounds of disbelief. A few looked at each other nervously. 3 ships against the Ravager fleet, Has shook his head. "The humans would be destroyed. Your species is barely capable of space travel. You have been in the stars for less than a century. The Ravagers have 12 vessels, all heavily armed." "So we should let everyone die because the odds are bad?" asked. "We should wait for a proper military response," Has said firmly. "Rushing in without adequate force is foolish. It is barbaric." There it was, the word they always used. Barbaric, primitive, violent. Humans had heard these words since they first made contact with the Galactic Council 15 years ago. The other species looked at Earth's history and saw only war. They saw humans as dangerous children who played with weapons and did not understand civilized behavior. "If being civilized means letting innocents die while we debate," said quietly, "then maybe barbaric is better." The chamber went silent, has stared at her for a long moment. His feathers flattened against his body. Finally, he looked at the hologram of the dying outpost. "Very well," he said. "The Council accepts humanity's offer of assistance, but understand this, Ambassador. The galaxy is watching. Your species' reputation is concerning. We tolerate your presence in Council space, but many question whether humans are too violent, too unpredictable for membership. This rescue will be observed closely. We expect proper military conduct. No unnecessary violence. No barbaric tactics. Follow established protocols." "We will save them," said simply. She turned and walked back to her seat. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them steady as she typed a message too. Around her were already discussing liability and political consequences. They were worried about blame if the rescue failed. They were worried about reports and documentation. Nobody except seemed worried about the 847 people who were running out of air. Her data pad buzzed. His reply was short. "Understood, we're already moving. Tell them we're coming." Looked at the hologram again. The red lights seemed brighter now. More systems failing. More time running out. She thought about what it had said. Proper conduct. No barbaric tactics. Follow protocols. She wondered if he understood that humans did not think about protocols when lives were at stake. Humans thought about one thing: getting there in time. On her data pad, another message appeared. This one was from Lieutenant, second in command. It contained 3 words and nothing else: "We won't fail." Believed him. She had met crew before. She had seen the way they trained, the way they prepared. Other species used drones and automated systems. They fought wars from a safe distance. They had computers and shields and careful strategies. Humans had something else. They had a strange willingness to run toward danger instead of away from it. They had a habit of fighting for people they had never met. They came from a planet that tried to kill them with storms and diseases and predators, and somehow that had made them into people who refused to leave anyone behind. The Galactic Council called it barbaric, called it hope. She watched the hologram count down the hours until life support failed. 6 hours until arrived. 17 hours until the air ran out. It would be close. It would be dangerous. But humans were coming, and that was more than anyone else could say. Captain stood on the bridge of the HSS Defender, watching the stars streak past as his ship pushed its engines to maximum speed. Behind him, 2 more human vessels followed in tight formation. The HSS Guardian and the HSS Sentinel were smaller than his ship, but their crews were just as determined. "How long until we reach Outpost 7? Asked. Lieutenant checked his display. 5 hours and 42 minutes at current speed. He paused. "Sir, we're running the engines at 115% capacity. The other species never push their ships this hard." "The other species aren't in a hurry," replied. On the main screen, a communication window opened. The face of has appeared, his feathers ruffled. "Captain, our sensors indicate you are exceeding safe velocity limits. You must reduce speed immediately. Your reckless approach could get us there in time to save lives," interrupted. "With respect, you can file a formal complaint after we bring those civilians home." He closed the communication before Has could respond, smiled slightly but said nothing. Around the bridge, the crew worked at their stations with focused intensity. Nobody questioned the captain's decision. Engineer Minu's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, if we keep pushing like this, we might have some problems." "Will the ship hold together?" asked. "Probably. Good enough." Walked to the tactical station where Corporal was studying the enemy formation. She had been pulled from the ship's small marine detachment to help plan the assault. Her dark hair was tied back tightly, and her face showed no emotion as she examined the data. 12 pirate ships, she said without looking up. They have us outnumbered 4-1. Standard galactic doctrine says we should wait for reinforcements. What do you think? Asked. Finally looked at him. I think galactic doctrine was written by people who never had to fight for their survival. Earth didn't give us the luxury of waiting for backup. We learned to fight with whatever we had, wherever we were. Nodded. This was why humanity scared the other species. Not because humans were stronger or more advanced. Not because their weapons were better. The Galactic Council had technology that was centuries ahead of Earth's. No, they were scared because humans fought differently. Pulled up files on his screen. Captain, I've been reviewing what the other species say about us. The reports are interesting. Show me, said. The main screen changed to display several incident reports. Read them aloud. 2 years ago, a human cargo ship was boarded by pirates. The crew fought them off using improvised weapons made from ship parts. The pirates reported that the humans refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Another report appeared. Last year, a human exploration team on the planet 9 encountered hostile wildlife. Instead of retreating to their ship as protocol suggests, they fought the creatures with hand weapons and saved a group of scientists. They were disturbed by human willingness to engage in close combat. More reports scrolled past. Each one told the same story. Humans did things that other species considered insane. They boarded enemy ships. They fought at close range. They used primitive weapons. They rarely retreated. There's a pattern, said. Every report mentions something about humans being unnaturally aggressive or disturbingly loyal to their comrades. The military command has a whole section about human barbaric combat tendencies. They think we're violent, Minyu said over the intercom. They don't understand that we're just practical. When someone needs help, you don't wait, you act. Thought about Earth. He had grown up in Seoul in a country that knew what it meant to fight for survival. But it wasn't just Korea. Every human nation, every human culture had learned the same lessons. Earth was not a kind planet. It had extreme weather that could kill you in hours. It had diseases that wiped out millions. It had predators and poisons and natural disasters. Other species evolved on gentler worlds. They developed civilization without constant threat. They created technology and culture in relative safety. When they reached the stars, they brought that mindset with them. War was fought with drones and computers. Risks were calculated and minimized. Lives were valuable enough to protect with overwhelming caution. Humans evolved differently. On Earth, caution meant death just as often as recklessness. Sometimes the only way to survive was to run toward the danger, not away from it. Sometimes you had to fight with whatever you had. Sometimes you had to protect your pack even if it meant putting yourself at risk. Those instincts did not go away when humans reached space. They became stronger. Sir, incoming transmission from the Ravager fleet, announced. A harsh face appeared on the screen. The pirate captain was a reptilian species with dark green scales and yellow eyes. He laughed when he saw. 3 little human ships, the pirate said. The Galactic Council sends children to fight. Turn back now and we might let you live. Release the civilians, said calmly. Leave the system. This is your only warning. The pirate laughed harder. Or what? You are outnumbered. You are primitive creatures playing with technology you barely understand. Go home, human. This does not concern you. Those civilians concern us, replied. Every life in that station concerns us, and we are not turning back. The pirate's laughter died. Then you will die with them. The transmission ended. Stood up from the tactical station. Captain, I need to brief the Marine teams. If we're going to do this, they need to be ready. What's your plan? Asked. The same plan humans always have, said. Get close, board their ships, make them wish they'd picked an easier target. She left the bridge and heard her voice over the intercom minutes later. She was speaking to the 40 Marines spread across the 3 ships. Her words were simple and direct. Listen up. We're about to do something that the rest of the galaxy thinks is crazy. We're going to board enemy vessels and fight them face to face. Other species gave up boarding action centuries ago. They think it's too dangerous, too barbaric, too many casualties. She paused. They're probably right, but those 847 people in that station don't care about proper military tactics. They don't care about acceptable casualty rates. They just want to live. And we're the only ones crazy enough to try saving them. Listen to the speech. He heard the Marines responding, their voices firm and ready. Among them was Private, a young man on his first deep space deployment, had read his file, joined the Space Force to see the stars and explore new worlds. He probably never thought he would have to fight. But he would fight anyway, because that was what humans did. Minu's voice came through again. Captain, I've been thinking, we need an advantage, something the pirates won't expect. What do you have in mind? Asked. Our reactor can be overloaded to create a plasma discharge. It would blind their sensors for about 30 seconds, long enough for us to close distance. That's incredibly dangerous, said. If you miscalculate, the reactor could explode. I won't miscalculate, Minu said confidently. And even if I did, we'd still create a distraction. Considered this. By all standard military doctrine, Minu's plan was insane. It risked the entire ship on a maneuver that might fail. The smart choice was to wait for backup. The safe choice was to approach cautiously. But smart and safe would not save those civilians in time. Do it, ordered. Prepare the reactor overload. Plot us a course through their formation. Get your Marines ready to board. We're going to show the Ravagers why humans are called fierce. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. No one hesitated. No one questioned the orders. They all understood what was at stake. On the screen, Outpost 7 grew larger. The pirate ships surrounded it like predators circling wounded prey. In 3 hours, the human fleet would arrive. The Ravagers expected an easy fight. They expected the humans to follow proper military procedure. They were about to learn that humans did not care about proper procedure. They cared about results. Watch the countdown timer. 3 hours until engagement. 16 hours until life support failed at the station. It would be close. But then again, humans were used to close calls. They came from a planet that tried to kill them every day. They learned to fight impossible odds. They learned that sometimes the only way forward was through the danger, not around it. The Galactic Council called them barbaric. The pirates called them primitive. Neither understood the simple truth that every human learned growing up on Earth. When someone needs help, you don't wait for permission. You don't calculate the odds. You don't debate the risks. You just go. You fight with everything you have. And you don't stop until everyone is safe or you can't fight anymore. That was what being human meant, and the galaxy was about to see it firsthand. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the 7 system. Immediately, alarms blared across all 3 ships. The Ravager fleet had detected them. On the Galactic Council observation feed, has watched the tactical display with growing concern. Ambassador stood beside him, her arms crossed, her face showing no emotion. They are moving directly toward the enemy, has said, his feathers standing up. Captain is not following any standard approach pattern. This is madness. This is necessity, replied quietly. On the bridge of the Defender, watched the enemy ships turn to face them, 12 vessels against 3. The pirates were confident. They had every right to be. By any logical calculation, the humans should lose. All ships maintain tight formation, ordered. Minu, status on the reactor. Ready when you are, Captain, Minu responded from engineering. Just say the word. The pirate commander's face appeared on screen again. "Last chance, humans. Surrender now and cut the transmission. I'm tired of listening to them talk. Menu, execute the reactor discharge. All ships full burn on my mark." "Sir, they're targeting us," warned. "8 ships locking weapons." "Let them lock," said. He counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Defender's reactor surged with power. Deep in the ship, Menu worked controls that were never meant to be pushed this far. The reactor's safety system screamed warnings, but he ignored them all. With precise timing, he vented the superheated plasma directly into space. The effect was immediate and spectacular. A brilliant cloud of white-hot plasma exploded from the Defender, spreading out in all directions. The pirates' sensors went blind instantly. Every targeting computer, every scanner, every detection system overloaded with interference. "Now," shouted, "all ships maximum acceleration." The 3 human vessels shot forward through the plasma cloud like bullets. Their own sensors were equally blind but had already calculated their course. They did not need to see. They only needed to get close. 30 seconds. That was all the time they had before the pirate systems would recover. 30 seconds to cross the distance that proper military doctrine said should take 30 minutes of careful maneuvering. The human ships emerged from the plasma cloud at point-blank range. The Ravager fleet scattered in confusion. No one had expected this. No one thought any species would be insane enough to charge directly into a superior force while blind. "Open fire," commanded. The Defender's weapons blazed. The ship shook with each shot. Beside them, the Guardian and Sentinel added their firepower. At this close range, it was impossible to miss. 3 pirate ships took heavy damage in the first seconds of combat. But the pirates were professionals too. They recovered quickly. Return fire hammered the human vessels. The Defender's shields failed within moments. Explosions rocked the ship. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone shouted. "Fire suppression systems failing on Deck 3. "Engines at 60%. Held onto his command chair as the ship lurched. This was the part that other species did not understand. Human ships were not built better. Human weapons were not more powerful. But human crews were trained to keep fighting even when everything was falling apart. "Boarding pods launch," ordered. From all 3 human ships, small pods shot toward the pirate vessels. Inside each pod, Marines in combat armor waited. These pods were small, fast, and designed for one purpose: to ram through an enemy hull and deposit soldiers inside. The Galactic Council never used boarding pods anymore. It was too dangerous. Too many soldiers died when pods were destroyed before reaching their target. Modern warfare was supposed to be clean and distant. But humans remembered a different kind of warfare. Corporal sat in the lead pod with her squad. The pod shook violently as it accelerated toward a pirate ship. Around her, 5 Marines checked their weapons. These were not energy weapons like most species used. These were chemical projectile weapons. Bullets, primitive by galactic standards. But bullets worked in any environment. They did not need power cells. They did not malfunction in extreme temperatures. And most importantly, the pirates' personal shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not high-velocity metal. 30 seconds to impact, the pod pilot shouted. Looked at her squad. "Remember, we're not here to fight pirates. We're here to save civilians. The pirates are just in our way. Get to the civilians, get them out. Everything else is secondary." "What if the pirates try to stop us?" asked Private. This was his first combat mission and his voice shook slightly. "Then we stop them first," said simply. The pod slammed into the pirate ship's hull with tremendous force. Cutting lasers activated automatically, burning through the metal. Atmosphere vented into space as the pod created a breach. Then the front of the pod exploded outward, and the Marines poured through. They emerged into a cargo bay. Pirates turned in surprise, reaching for weapons. Squad opened fire immediately. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Bullets tore through the air. 3 pirates went down before they could even raise their weapons. The rest scattered for cover. They returned fire with energy weapons, but their shots were panicked and wild. They had never fought an enemy that came directly at them like this. They were used to standoff battles with shields and drones. Squad moved like they had trained for hundreds of hours. They advanced under covering fire, using the cargo containers for protection. When a pirate tried to flank them, spotted him and fired 3 quick shots. The pirate fell. "This way," pointed toward a corridor. "The civilians should be in the lower sections." They moved through the ship, meeting resistance at every turn. But the pirates were not prepared for this kind of combat. They had technology and weapons. What they did not have was the absolute determination that humans possessed. On another pirate ship, a different Marine squad was fighting their way to the bridge. On a third ship, engineers were sabotaging the weapon systems. Across the battlefield, human Marines were doing what they did best, bringing the fight directly to the enemy. Back in space, the battle continued. The Defender took hit after hit. The ship was falling apart around its crew, but they kept fighting. The Guardian lost its main engines and started drifting, but its weapons still fired. The Sentinel took a direct hit to its reactor and had to shut down half its systems. But the pirates were losing ships too. 3 were already destroyed. 2 more were disabled. And everywhere human Marines were inside their vessels, causing chaos. Has watched the battle through the Council feed. His feathers were flat against his body now, a sign of deep shock. "They are destroying themselves," he whispered. "Those ships cannot survive much longer." "They don't need to survive," said. "They just need to last long enough." On Outpost 7, the civilians huddled in sealed compartments. They were 12 different species from 12 different worlds. Some had families waiting for them. Some were just workers who wanted to go home. All of them were terrified. They had been listening to the battle through the station's damaged communications system. They heard the explosions. They heard the Ravager fleet calling for reinforcements. They heard someone say that human ships had arrived. "Only 3 ships," someone asked in disbelief. "That's all." "That's all they sent," another voice replied. "We're going to die here." But then something strange happened. The pirate ships stopped firing at the station. They were too busy fighting the humans, and the humans were not just fighting. They were winning. Inside the pirate vessel, the squad finally reached the lower sections. They found a group of civilians locked in a storage room. 15 people of various species, all looking terrified. Lowered her weapon. "We're here to get you out. Stay close and follow our instructions." A child, no more than 5 years old in human terms, stared at. "You came for us." "Of course we came," said gently. She knelt down to the child's level. "We're humans. When someone needs help, we come. That's what we do." The child's parent, a tall with golden feathers, looked at with something like wonder. "But there are only 3 of your ships," the council said. "The council talks," interrupted. "We act. Now let's move. We need to get you to our extraction point." They moved through the ship, fighting past pirates who tried to stop them. Took a plasma shot to his shoulder and kept going. Another Marine was hit in the leg but refused to stop. They protected the civilians with their own bodies, pushing them forward even as the battle raged around them. On the Defender's bridge, alarms were constant now. The ship was dying, knew it. His crew knew it, but they were not dead yet. "Captain, the pirate flagship is trying to run," reported. Smiled grimly. "Then let's make sure it doesn't get far, all remaining power to weapons." "Sir, if we divert power from life support." "Do it." The Defender's last weapons fired. The shots were weak, barely more than pebbles thrown at a mountain, but they hit the fleeing flagship's engines. It was enough. The flagship stumbled, its acceleration dropping. At that moment, the Guardian, still drifting but still dangerous, fired its last torpedo. The weapon flew true, slamming into the flagship's damaged engines. The pirate ship exploded in a ball of fire. The remaining Ravager ships broke formation. Some tried to flee, others surrendered. The battle was over. But the rescue was not finished yet. Squad and dozens of others were still inside the pirate ships, still bringing out civilians. The Defender was barely functional. The Guardian could not move. The Sentinel was running on emergency power. And on Outpost 7, 847 civilians were still waiting to be saved. The station's life support had less than 10 hours remaining. The hardest part was still ahead. But as looked at his battered ship and his exhausted crew, he felt only determination. They had come this far. They had done the impossible. Now they just had to finish the job. The battle was over, but the danger was not. Stood on what remained of the Defender's bridge, looking at the sensor readings from Outpost 7. The station was dying slowly, bleeding air and power into the void of space. "Life support status?" he asked. Worked his damaged console. 9 hours and 20 minutes, maybe less. The station took more damage during the fight. Multiple hull breaches, fire suppression systems offline, backup generators failing. And the civilians? Still sealed in the lower sections. 847 confirmed alive, but some are injured. They need medical attention. Nodded slowly. His ship could barely move. The Guardian was dead in space, only kept alive by emergency power. The Sentinel had some mobility, but not much. Between the three ships, they had enough rescue shuttles to evacuate maybe 200 people at a time. That meant multiple trips, and they did not have time for multiple trips. "Get me Lieutenant on the Sentinel," ordered. A young woman's face appeared on the screen. Lieutenant looked exhausted, with a cut on her forehead that was still bleeding. "Captain." "Can the Sentinel dock with the station?" asked. "Yes, but barely. Our docking clamps are damaged. I can hold position for maybe 3 hours before structural stress tears us apart." 3 hours will have to be enough. Dock with the station. Begin evacuation immediately. Prioritize the injured and the young. Understood. Turn 2. Get our remaining shuttles in the air. Coordinate with the Guardian. We pull everyone out in one operation. "Sir, I'm detecting something," said suddenly. His voice was tense. "There's a power signature in the station's core. It's not consistent with normal operations." "Show me." The display changed. Deep in the station's center, near the main reactor, something was drawing power. A lot of power. And it had a very specific energy pattern. Minu's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, that's a bomb." Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone understood what that meant. The pirates had left a final surprise. If they could not keep the station, they would destroy it. "How big?" asked quietly. "Big enough to vaporize the entire station and anything nearby," Minu replied, "including our ships if we're still docked." On the Galactic Council feed, Has saw the same readings. His feathers stood completely upright. "The humans must withdraw immediately. They cannot save the civilians now. The risk is too great." Ambassador turned to face him. "Withdraw. There are 847 people on that station. If the bomb detonates while the human ships are docked, everyone dies," Has said firmly, "including the humans. The logical choice is to retreat and mourn the loss. Staying is suicide." "Then you don't understand humans at all," said. On the Defender was already planning. "Minu, can you disarm it?" "Maybe, but someone has to go into the core chamber to access it manually. The remote systems are destroyed." "How bad is the radiation in there?" Minu hesitated. "Captain, the core is damaged. Radiation levels are off the scale. Anyone who goes in there will be dead within hours, even with treatment." "Looked at, we can't ask anyone to do that." "You're right," agreed. We can't ask, but I'm betting someone will volunteer. He was right. Before he even finished speaking, Minu's voice came back. I'll do it. Minu. I'm the engineer, Minu interrupted. I understand the systems better than anyone. I have the best chance of success. And Captain, we both know someone has to go. Let it be me. Closed his eyes for a moment. This was the burden of command, making choices that would haunt him forever. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Minu said. Those people need to live. That's all that matters. Then go, said quietly, and thank you. While Minu prepared for his mission, the evacuation began. The Sentinel docked with Outpost 7, its damaged clamps barely holding. Shuttles from all three ships flew continuous runs, picking up civilians and ferrying them to safety. Inside the station, Marines found the sealed compartments where the civilians waited. The door to the first compartment was jammed. They spent precious minutes cutting through with plasma torches. When it finally opened, they found 63 people pressed together in a space meant for 20. Everyone stay calm, announced. We're evacuating you now. Follow our instructions exactly. They moved through the station in groups, Marines guiding the way. The station shook constantly. More systems failed every minute. Lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Private helped an elderly woman walk. She was weak from the thin air and needed support. Why did you come? She asked him. Your people barely know us. We didn't need to know you, said. You needed help, that's enough. In another section, other Marines found a group of children separated from their parents. Some were crying. Others were too shocked to react. A young Marine named picked up a small child and carried her on his shoulders, making her laugh despite the danger. Down in the reactor core, Minu worked alone. The radiation was so intense that his equipment was already malfunctioning. He could feel it in his body, like fire in his blood. The bomb sat before him, a complex device with multiple redundant triggers. Through his communicator, fed him information. The design is military. There should be 3 primary detonators and 2 backups. Minu's hands were steady as he worked. I see them, disabling the first now. His vision blurred slightly. The radiation was already affecting his nervous system. He blinked hard and kept working. On the bridge, monitored the evacuation. Status: 400 civilians evacuated, reported. 447 still on station. The Sentinel reports its docking clamps are failing faster than expected. They estimate 2 hours before they have to undock. 2 hours, 447 people, mean you working alone in deadly radiation. The numbers did not add up. They were not going to make it. Unless they did something crazy. Contact every civilian shuttle in the area, ordered. Every cargo ship, every private vessel, anyone who can fly and carry passengers, tell them we need help. Sir, there are at least 20 civilian ships in this system, but they're not military. They're not trained for. They don't need to be trained, said. They just need to care. Sent out the broadcast. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one by one, responses came back. A cargo hauler changed course toward the station. A passenger liner diverted from its route. A mining ship that happened to be nearby turned and accelerated. One response stood out. It was from a private shuttle pilot named Sora. I'm 20 minutes out. How can I help? We need to evacuate civilians, replied. It's dangerous. Your ship might not survive. Then I better fly well, Sora said, sending my approach vector now. Within 30 minutes, a dozen civilian ships arrived. None of them were military. None of them had to be here. But they came anyway, because humans had shown them that some things were more important than safety. The evacuation accelerated. Civilian ships docked alongside the Sentinel. Shuttles flew double time. The Marines pushed themselves past exhaustion, carrying injured civilians, helping the weak, ensuring no one was left behind. In the core, Minyu disabled the second detonator. His hands shook now. He could barely see. The radiation counter on his suit had stopped working because the levels were too high to measure. "Third detonator is tricky," he said over the communicator. His voice was slurred. "Give me a minute." "Take your time," said, though they both knew there was no time left. "Captain," Minyu's voice was quiet now. "Tell my family, tell them I wasn't special. Any of us would have done this." "I'll tell them," promised. "But you are special, Minyu. You saved 847 lives today." "We saved them," Minyu corrected. "All of us. That's what being human means." His hands moved over the bomb. Disconnect this wire. Bypass that circuit. His training took over even as his body failed. The third detonator went dark. 2 more to go. On the bridge, updated the count. 600 evacuated, 247 remaining. 90 minutes until life support fails completely. Helped the last group from his section toward the docking port. But as they moved, an explosion rocked the station. The corridor ahead collapsed, blocking their path. "Find another route," ordered over the radio. Looked around frantically. There was another corridor, but it meant going through a section that had lost atmosphere. The civilians would have to use emergency masks, and some of the masks might not work. "We don't have a choice," said to the group. "Stay together, help each other. We're getting out of here." They moved through the airless section, civilians holding onto each other, sharing masks when they could. One mask failed. A young man started to pass out from lack of air. Gave him his own mask and held his breath. His lungs burned. His vision darkened. But he kept moving, kept pushing the civilians forward. Just as he thought he would black out, they reached the other side. The young man pressed the mask back to his face. "Thank you," the man gasped. Just nodded. He could not speak, but he could keep moving. In the core, Minyu disabled the fourth detonator. 1 more to go, but his body was shutting down. His hands would not respond properly. He could barely think. "Minyu's voice seemed far away. "Almost done," Minyu whispered. He reached for the final detonator. His hand slipped. He tried again. His vision was almost completely dark now, but he could feel the connections. His training, his knowledge, his determination, all of it came together in this moment. The final detonator went dark. The bomb was disabled. "It's done," Minyu said. Then he collapsed. On the bridge, alarms stopped blaring. The bomb's signature disappeared from the sensors. They had done it. "All ships increase evacuation speed," ordered. "We're running out of time, but the bomb is gone. Get everyone out, now." The final rush began. Every shuttle flew as fast as it dared. Every ship carried as many people as it could. The Marines swept through the station one last time, checking every compartment, every room, making sure no one was left behind. With 15 minutes before life support failure, the last civilian was carried aboard a shuttle. 847 people, all safe. But there was one more person still on the station. "Minyu!" And 2 Marines rushed to the core. They found him collapsed on the floor, barely breathing. The radiation had destroyed his body, but he was alive. Barely. They carried him out, moving as fast as they could. The station shook violently now, tearing itself apart. They reached the last shuttle just as the final supports failed. The shuttle launched. Seconds later, Outpost 7 began to break apart, but everyone was off. Everyone was safe. Against impossible odds, the humans had saved them all. 3 days after the rescue, the Galactic Council chambers were more crowded than they had been in decades. Every was present. Every seat in the observation areas was filled. Ships from 100 worlds orbited Prime, their crews watching the proceedings on there. The rescued civilians stood in the center of the chamber. 847 beings of 12 different species, wearing simple clothes provided by the human ships. They looked small and fragile under the grand dome of the council hall, but their presence spoke louder than any words. Ambassador entered the chamber and walked to the human section. Captain walked beside her, wearing his formal uniform. It was the only one that had survived the battle. Behind them came Lieutenant, Corporal, and 30 other humans who represented the crews of all 3 ships. Among them was Minu. He moved slowly, leaning on a walking stick. The radiation had damaged his body in ways that would take months or years to heal fully. His hair had fallen out and his hands shook constantly. But he was alive. Human medical technology, pushed to its limits, had saved him. Has called the session to order. His feathers were perfectly arranged, his voice formal and controlled. The Galactic Council acknowledges the events at Outpost 7. We have reviewed all records, all communications, all sensor data. He paused, looking around the chamber. The humans were successful in their rescue operation. All 847 civilians were evacuated safely. However, we must discuss the methods used. Here it comes, thought, the criticism, the complaints about broken protocols. Captain has continued. You violated 17 separate articles of the Galactic Military Conduct Agreement. You exceeded safe velocity limits. You engaged in reckless combat maneuvers. You ordered boarding actions, a practice that has been deemed too dangerous for civilized warfare. You risked your ships and crews in ways that violate every principle of modern military doctrine. Stood straight, his face showing no emotion. I did what was necessary to save lives. Necessary? Has his feathers ruffled. You nearly destroyed your entire fleet. You sustained 43 casualties, including deaths. 212 of your crew members were injured. Your ships will take months to repair. Some sections are damaged beyond recovery. And said simply. The word hung in the air, has seemed taken aback. And, Captain, do you not understand the severity? I understand perfectly, interrupted. 43 humans died, 212 were injured, our ships are wrecks. Those are real costs, those losses hurt. He gestured to the civilians in the center of the chamber. But 847 beings are alive who would be dead. That is also real. OK clicked his mandibles. Captain, you seem to treat casualties as acceptable. The galactic military standard is to minimize losses through careful planning and while you plan, people die, said flatly. With respect, your careful planning had already decided those civilians were acceptable losses. You discussed treaties and protocols while they ran out of air. We didn't have time for careful planning. We had time for action. Ambassador stood up. You called this session to discuss human methods. I think it's time we had an honest discussion. You call us fierce, barbaric, violent. Let's talk about what those words really mean. She walked down to stand beside the civilians. For years, you've looked at humanity and seen only our history of war. You see that we evolved on a dangerous planet. You see that we fight differently than you do, and you judge us for it. Has started to speak but raised her hand. Let me finish. You judge us, but here's what you don't understand. We are fierce. We are barbaric by your standards. We are violent when necessary. Do you know why? She turned to look at the civilians. Because we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. A world with storms that could destroy cities, diseases that wiped out millions, predators that saw us as food. We survived because we learned to fight back. We learned to protect each other. We learned that sometimes the only way to save someone is to put yourself at risk. A small child stepped forward from the group of civilians. She was the same child that had rescued. In her hands, she held a piece of cloth with something drawn on it. May I speak? The child asked in a small voice. Has looked surprised, but he nodded. You may. The child walked to and held up the cloth. It was a drawing, crude but clear. It showed a human figure holding hands with other figures of different species. Above them, stars shone in the darkness. The human soldiers came for us, the child said. They didn't know us, they didn't have to help us, but they came anyway. One of them carried me when I was too scared to walk. Another one gave me food from his own rations when I was hungry. They protected us with their own bodies. She turned to face the council. My father says humans are violent, but they were only violent to the bad people. To us, they were kind. They were brave. They were. She struggled for the word. They were heroes. The child's father stood up. He was a tall with golden feathers, a professor at a prestigious university. My daughter is right. I taught my students that humans were barbaric. I wrote papers about their dangerous tendencies, but I was wrong. He walked to stand beside his daughter. When the pirates attacked, I sent messages to my government. I begged for rescue. Do you know what they told me? They said a fleet would arrive in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We had hours, not weeks. His voice grew stronger. But the humans came. 3 small ships against 12. They should have lost. By every calculation, they should have died trying. But they didn't calculate. They didn't debate. They just came. More civilians began to stand. One by one, they came forward to speak. A scientist, a human soldier named gave me his air mask when mine failed. He held his breath until we reached safety. He risked his life for mine. An engineer. When the station was breaking apart, a human marine named went back 3 times to check for stragglers. The 3rd time, the corridor collapsed behind him. He was trapped for 20 minutes. He never stopped looking for people to save. A merchant. I asked a human why they came. She said, because you needed help. As if that was the only reason anyone would ever need. The testimonies continued. Each civilian had a story. Each one had witnessed something that challenged everything the Galactic Council believed about humans. When they finished, silence filled the chamber. Has sat very still, his feathers flat against his body. Others looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, OK spoke. I have a question for Captain. During the battle, you gave an order to divert power from life support to weapons. That decision risked your entire crew. How do you justify that? I don't justify it, said. I made a choice in the moment. If we didn't stop the pirate flagship from escaping, it would have brought reinforcements. More people would have died. My crew understood the risk. They agreed with the decision. But you could have all died, OK pressed. Yes, agreed. We could have, but we didn't. And because we took that risk, 847 civilians went home to their families. OK was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Engineer Minu, you volunteered to disarm the bomb knowing the radiation would kill you. Why? Minu stepped forward, leaning heavily on his walking stick. Because someone had to, and I was the best qualified. He smiled slightly. And because I'm not special, any human would have done the same thing. I find that hard to believe, OK said. Then you don't understand us at all, Minu replied. Every human child learns the same lesson growing up on Earth. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We're not the most intelligent, but we never give up. We protect our pack. And somewhere along the way, we decided that pack means everyone who needs help. Ambassador spoke again. You called this session to judge humanity's methods. You wanted to criticize our violence, our recklessness, our disregard for proper procedure. So here's my question for you. Would you rather we had followed your rules and let everyone die? No one answered. That's what I thought, said. You can call us barbaric, you can call us fierce, you can call us violent, but when someone is in trouble, when lives are at stake, we are the ones who come. Not because it's safe, not because it's easy, not because there's anything to gain. We come because it's right. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each. So yes, we're fierce. We're fierce in our loyalty. We're fierce in our compassion. We're fierce in our refusal to accept that some lives are acceptable losses. If that makes us barbaric by your standards, then I'll wear that label proudly. The chamber erupted in noise, argued with each other. Some supported the humans, others still had doubts, but the civilians in the center of the room started something unexpected. They began to applaud. It started with the child clapping her small hands together. Her father joined her. Then the others. One by one, all 847 survivors applauded. The sound echoed through the grand chamber, drowning out the debates. Has stood up, raising his wings for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to fade. When it finally did, he looked different somehow. Less certain, less formal. I have been a for 43 years, he said quietly. I have presided over countless debates about military policy, about proper conduct, about civilized behavior. I thought I understood what civilization meant. He looked at the humans. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps civilization isn't about following protocols. Perhaps it's about something simpler and more important. He turned to address the full council. I move that we vote on humanity's petition for full council membership, not as observers, not as probationary members, as full and equal participants in the Galactic Council. The chamber exploded with noise again. This was unprecedented. Humans had only been in space for a few decades. They were supposed to wait centuries before being considered for full membership. But OK stood up. I second the motion. Others began to stand. One by one, they voiced their support. When the vote was called, it was nearly unanimous. Has turned to Ambassador. The Galactic Council offers humanity full membership, with all rights and responsibilities. Furthermore, we propose that the human military be designated as the Council's rapid response force, with authority to act in emergency situations without waiting for full Council approval. Looked at, he nodded slightly. She turned back to the Council. We accept with one condition, said. We'll protect this galaxy. We'll respond to emergencies. We'll save lives whenever we can, but we do it our way. We don't abandon people because the odds are bad. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We don't wait for perfect conditions. When someone needs help, we go. That's not negotiable. Has his feathers ruffled, but he nodded. Agreed, you do it your way. The session ended soon after. As they filed out, many of them stopped to speak with the human delegation. Some apologized for their previous judgments. Others thanked them for what they had done. A few asked questions about human military training, clearly rethinking their own methods. The rescued civilians surrounded the humans, many of them crying. They hugged her Marines. They shook hands. They tried to find words to express their gratitude, but words seemed inadequate. Minyu sat down on a bench, his body too weak to stand any longer. The child climbed up next to him and took his hand in her small one. Does it hurt? She asked. Sometimes, Minyu admitted, but it was worth it. Because you saved us. Because you get to grow up, Minyu said gently. You get to have a future. That's worth any pain. The child leaned against him. When I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to be fierce. Minyu smiled. Then be fierce in kindness. Be fierce in protecting others. Be fierce in doing what's right even when it's hard. That's the best kind of fierce. Outside the council chambers on ships across the galaxy, the news spread. Humanity had been accepted as full council members. The reasons why spread even faster. Stories of the rescue, of the impossible odds, of the sacrifices made. On Earth, recruitment centers for the Space Force were overwhelmed with applications. Young people who had heard the stories wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. They wanted to be fierce in all the right ways. Other species began to reconsider their own military doctrines. Maybe there was value in close combat training. Maybe drones and automation weren't always the answer. Maybe sometimes you needed people who were willing to look danger in the face and keep moving forward. The Galactic Council had learned something important that day. Civilization wasn't measured by how advanced your technology was. It wasn't measured by how carefully you followed protocols. It wasn't measured by how much you avoided risk. True civilization was measured by what you were willing to do for others, by how far you would go to protect the vulnerable, by whether you had the courage to act when action was needed, even if the odds were against you. And in that measure, humanity was the most civilized species in the galaxy. Captain stood at a viewport looking out at the stars. Behind him, his crew was celebrating. They had earned their place among the stars, not through technology or weapons, but through something simpler and more powerful. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human, and the galaxy was better for it. Somewhere in the darkness of space, another distress call would come eventually. Another group of people would need help. The Galactic Council would debate and plan and calculate risks. But humanity would be ready. They would always be ready, because when someone needed help, humans did not hesitate. They did not calculate. They did not debate. They just came, fierce and loyal and unstoppable. That was what being human meant, and the galaxy was finally starting to understand.